What's good, everybody? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and it's a little chilly outside. Not like the restaurant, but we're still gonna tie a stickleback, stickleback, stickleback. So, grab your vise, grab your tools, let's have some fun. Alright, before we get started, as you can see, I'm tying on the transformer vise today from Stonefo, but I've been tying some small bugs. I don't want this jaw for the streamer that we're about to tie. So here's how difficult it is to switch the heads or jaws, if you will, from Stonefo. Pull back, this head is now out. Here's the streamer jaw, pull back, insert, and that's just how difficult it is to switch from small bugs to a streamer jaw. Alright, to start this fly off, we're looking to tie a stickleback minnow that's going to be roughly this long when we finish. And so for the back portion, I'm using a 20mm Spawn fly fish shank. And I'm not going to use it to attach anything to the shank itself. I just want this little articulated streamer. And so I'm just going to tie that arm down. And what I'm using today for thread is some Uni 6/0 in white. And I'm going to make one more pass just to make sure that arm stays securely tied down there. And now we're ready to start in on this bug, if you will. And so first thing, I've got some lateral scale, and this is the 1/69th of an inch cut in Opal, and a little goes a long way, and I don't know, maybe somewhere in the realm of 5 to 8 strands is what I'm looking for. And when I say that, of course, I'm going to cut a chunk that's going to have way too much, but it's alright, it'll just be a little extra shiny. And I don't need this coming off all the way around the hook or anything crazy. Just a little attention grabber, so I'm just going to fold it over my thread, grab both sides like that, and at this point my thread now is in control of where I place it, back, front, all that good stuff. Just need to get it on there, let it go, and then pull back and finish tying down. And so you'll still get this splaying effect coming off the back of that hook. And as far as trimming that out, I'm going to wait till we add our next element. And this is one of my favorite materials to use for tying sticklebacks and just any small minnow, if you will. We've got some Mallard flank feather, and this is our new flank feather from Spawn, so the Super Select Mallard, and we have it in 2 grades, both C and A. And this is grade C, just so I can show you guys. Don't be afraid of that difference in the grade. These are still great feathers. They're still going to tie a beautiful fly. And even if you're not getting your Mallard from Spawn, and it might be a different company, you get a big pack of Mallard and a lot of those feathers seem unusable, right? Wrong. You just have to adjust a little bit, find something they do work for. And so hopefully this kind of kickstarts your creativity as far as that goes. First thing I'm going to do, get all those fibers going back over the back end there, and once I have that, I'm going to start wrapping. If you see here, if I wrap this way, it'll stay on the side of the quill and those fibers will really splay out. But if I take this move, and this is my secret move here, slightly backward before I come, now I'm against the flat portion of the inside of the quill, and that's where I want to stay. I want this thing to be really sleek. I don't want a big profile. And as you can see, by wrapping on that inner portion of the quill, the flat inner portion, I'm going to maintain a very slim profile. So let me get my thread back into play, and that's going to be my tie off spot right there. So as you can see, go ahead and still clean that out. Where this V shape is, that's where your thread's going to grab, and as clean as a whistle. 3 wraps. I'm going to 1 in front just to get it out of my way, and then I can very carefully and neatly trim out the rest of that feather. And voila, pretty simple so far. Make sure you snug that down with some extra thread wraps. And now we're ready for our body material, if you will. And I just have some pearl Estaz, very simple. Any chenille would work, dubbing would definitely work, but I want this to be a relatively simple fly that's very repeatable, because this fly does get eaten. And so trim out some space there for a clean tie-in. Make sure you're getting all the way back to where your previous tie off is on that mallard, and then simply wrap forward, come back one more time, and make sure it's secure. At this point, just treat it like anything else. Give a little brush back as you go if you want that chenille to sit in a certain way. If not, just have at it. It's chenille. You can't really mess it up too much. And at this point, I'm going to leave myself enough room there to get another feather tied in. And so I'm just going to turn this over and tie it off on the underside like so. Really snug that in there. Get that core tied to the shank. That's the key. I'll try to stop bumping the vise so much, but as you know, I do have a disease and it's chronic vise mover. Something new. Your HMO might not cover that, but it's worth bringing up to the doctor next time you see him. So now you can see the end of my fibers here from that mallard, and at this point I can go ahead and safely just trim out these flash fibers. A little angle cut, ho hum. We got a little bling bling in the back end there, get their attention, and then as this articulating minnow goes by them, well, it's gonna happen. They're gonna be committed at that point. All right, so if you see here, I've got some flash sticking out from that Estaz. Now is the time to get in there and get cute with your scissors and trim that out. Got one more piece. Kind of tough to see some of this stuff. It's pretty clear. If you miss one little fiber, it's not the end of the world. Alright, so I've got my second feather ready to go, and as far as like these grade C's, I'm not worried about how far back these reach even, because I'm going to use 4 feathers, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and what that gives you is this overlapping effect. So there's almost no way you can miss on a full coverage as long as you're paying attention to where your fibers reach and where you're tying them in. So again, create a little clean spot for that tie-in. Get it snug back all the way to where you previously tied off the chenille. Bring these fibers up, trim them out. Now we can advance our thread to the front. So we're ready to catch this second feather. And I'm going to do the same thing, get the fibers flowing toward the back. Remember that move, not straight down, just slightly back, and it'll help curve that feather for you. Re-grip there, and let's start this bad boy. There's one. Be mindful of your thread there. 2. And that's going to look pretty nice here by the time we get it up one more time. So then, again, get the fibers out that you don't need. Create a V. And that's your little cheat code for where to put that thread. So if you see now, following that V, and it's clean. I don't have to worry about, oh, I got to trim out some fibers now. Nope, they're already out. At this point, clean tie off. I just get the thread in front of what I want to cut. It'll prop that quill up ever so slightly, and it just makes for a slightly cleaner cut, and I'm a fan. So here we go. At this point, if you had your little bucket of water next to you, this is when you would go ahead and slick down all those fibers, and you'd see it's really a slim profile. All right. Whip finish here. One. Let's do a second one, and we'll move on from there. Nothing to it. Cut your thread. Pink. Get out your head cement. And for the head cement today, we are using Loon hard head clear. And a little dab will go a long way, so don't sit there and worry about getting it all pretty and covered. Just get it covered. The rest it'll work for you. It'll soak in and look beautiful, like so. All right, the rear portion of our fly is finished. Now, one thing I like to do, I'm going to set this aside, but the glue is still wet. So I come in with my whip finish tool, go ahead and grab at the eye, and then I'll just simply release this shank from the vise. Like so. And now I set that to the side, and I don't have to worry about it turning over or falling and getting that glue into the fibers. And I also know the orientation when I set it, and so I know where to grab that to attach it to our front portion. And I slick in a hook here. All right, so we've got the SA254 from Ahrex. This is a size 6. So as you see, I had a 20mm shank in the back, and it's going to roughly match up with what's in the front as far as usable space on that shank. And for the bead today, got a Spawn Super Bead in the finish nickel. And these beads are 6.3 millimeter, and they are tungsten, and they are heavy. But you want this fly to get down, and this is going to do it. Some non-lead 0.025, 5 wraps. No other reason than that's what we've got space for. Trim in the front. Round that over with your dedicated wire cutting scissor. If you don't have the dedicated wire cutting scissor, thumb's pretty good. Second option. Alright. Get that all in there. Excuse me. Just snug it up behind that bead, making sure the bulk of it is on the top or outside of that jig shank. Get our thread started again. Trim that. And let's get this wire. Excuse me. I'm trying to eat some bugs over here apparently. Alright, now we got the wire tied in. And at this point, I'll just turn that back over, work my thread down a little bit toward the bend, and then come up. So I'm roughly in the middle of our working space on that shank. Now, one thing I did is I took a 19 millimeter shank from Spawn and I cut the front off. Why? Because once I slip that into the rear portion of what our tail, if you will, of this fly is, I'm going to attach it like so, and it'll make sense here in a second. So here's that rear portion of our fly that we set aside. If I take that out, this is my top according to how I tied it in the vise. Go ahead and slip that shank on. Now, in order for this to fit onto this hook, I have to flip it over, which of course lines up now because it's a jig hook, so it's upside down right now. And then place it like so. And as far as where the bend of the eye meets the arm, if you will, that's kind of where I'm looking at the curvature of that hook to line up there. And I can simply tie it in. Get a few wraps on there to hold it, and then I'll check and make sure it's sitting where I want. 9 times out of 10, it's going to line up very close to the hook barb. So if you see where that hook starts to curve down, it sits above the hook barb, and that's where it aligns with our eye of the shank. If all of that checks out for you, continue. Really sandwich this down and get a bunch of thread wraps in here. One thing you can do too is come in with your thumb and try not to push it off, but push down on that arm slightly and just get it a little muscle memory, if you will, into there. And then when you come in to tie it down, it should come down a little bit easier for you, like so. There we go. And of course you could use a little head cement or some super glue, whatever you want to really solidify that, but it's not necessary. Just make sure you use plenty of thread wraps, really get that securely tied down. That is going nowhere, and so let's continue the theme here and repeat a few steps and we'll be done. So now I've got some more Mallard, and the only difference here, it's a little bit darker than our first couple feathers, and that's a good thing, I guess. It makes me happy. I hope it makes the fish happy. And tie that in. Get our scissors here and we'll just trim out the rest of these Mallard tips, like so. And get that out of your way so you can see. Get it out of my way so I can see. It'll be helpful. Thread in the front. One more time. Pull those fibers back gently. Get them coaxed and convinced that that's where they want to sit. Once they do, slightly back. And now you'll be wrapping on the flat inside portion of your quill. Again, it's just to maintain a sleek, smaller profile. If you want a big profile, by all means tie on the side of that quill and really get those fibers to splay. And looks like we're going to get 2 full wraps here. I'm going to turn it over just because of where that arm is tied down. I don't want to break my thread a bunch of times here, so kind of get in front of that tie down, and then I won't have any issues. Like that. I don't know if you guys heard that. That was me hitting the point of that hook. Danger zone. Alright. I won't worry about it if you don't worry about it. Now let's get our thread back into play. Come back once again to solidify. Time for some Estaz. And I'm just going to trim a little bit off the end before tying that in again. Expose that core. And tie it in all the way back where we tied off that mallard. So keep in mind the space you have to work here, not as much as we had on that 20 mil because of the way it sits on the bend of that hook. So we're gonna come up to, let's call this good right here on this wrap. And that gives me plenty of room for the final feather and also for a little hot spot. Like so, pull it back, get in front. Now I don't have to worry about where my thread is when I cut this out. And again, check to make sure all these fibers that sneak in the front of it are trimmed out, but it's not as essential as it was back on that rear portion where you have to keep that eye free of material. At this point your fingers should be able to grab anything that's extraneous, get it out of the way. Alright, for the little hot spot here, or gills, or whatever you want to call it, we've got some Spawn UV Simi seal, and this is UV slow burn flame. I don't need much of this, but about like so, and that's going to be doubled here in a second. And so all I'm going to do is look for the midpoint, and this is again on the bottom. This is the underside of the fly. For tying a jig style, tie in like so. Take one wrap forward, pull this back, get my thread in front of this material, and now I have a flatter area to tie down, and as you see it should be fairly centered. Alright, at this point just get that thread to the front, out of the way, and we're ready for our final element. You guessed it, one more mallard feather. So if this fly had to have a name, it'd be the 4-feathered stickleback. You name it what you want to name it, but I just call it lunch. Alright, get that tied in. Come in with your scissor, all the tips of that mallard, trim those out. Really get it solidified there. And now all we have to do is one more wrap and this fly's ready to fish. So get all those fibers printed back, and again that first move slightly to the back. If you do that, it's going to change the way you tie. You're going to have so much fun getting a flat profile, small profile, whatever you want to call it. A non-bulky streamer. And you can see those are trying to cheat on me. Watch that bead. It'll get grabby on you, so make sure you're diligent and patient. I don't like those little ones right there. There we go. At this point, you just kind of follow with the wrap, and it'll show you where the gap needs to be. And of course, I've still got 2 little fibers trapped there. Let's see if we can dig them out after here. Tie that off. Maybe 4 wraps there. Really get it solidified. And this is not necessary, but it keeps me very aware of where my thread is at all times. If I just slip that in the front, one cut, and nothing's in the way. I'm going to show you these trapped fibers that I'm talking about. There's nothing I can do but go ahead and release and peel. If you go with the direction you wrap, they should slip right off. Don't even need to get a scissor in there. Alright, finish this little thread head or thread neck, and we are ready for a couple whip finishes. And this just goes to show you guys, if you're creative with the materials you choose, you can tie a very simple pattern and make it mimic any of the bait fish that you have in your area, and it does translate to tying small bugs as well. Don't be afraid to try new material. Substitute here and there, and you'll find something that really makes you happy. Alright, a little head cement, and this fly is good to go. And if you don't have sticklebacks in your area, it's okay, because again, chances are those fish are going to see this as a small bait fish and say, yep, it moves like it's supposed to, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and eat it, and then it becomes a favorite in their diet, and they'll gladly eat it the second time you throw it too. And there you have it, a little stickleback, a lot of mallard, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget that cute little hot spot. That's going to look really nice when this is all slicked back and wet, moving in the water just like it should. And as always, if you did like it, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. And if you didn't like it, please hit like and subscribe anyway. Tell us why you didn't like it at the bottom. We'll be sure to hit you back. Thank you. And as always, we will see you guys on the water.